welcome to ESL 101 with Ina. Before we start, remember that these are my personal tips based on my experience and in accordance with the standards of Novakid. In this video, let's find out what it really takes to be a Novakid teacher. Make sure to apply these during your demo and interview. Number one is correct error effectively. When a student makes a mistake, it is important to correct timely and appropriately. This is to avoid forming a bad habit and miss the mistake getting fossilized. When correcting, you have to remember there is such a thing as overcorrecting, which can interrupt the lesson flow if you do it at the wrong time, disturbing the flow of thought of your student. It could also lower the confidence and create hesitancy when you correct in a negative and not kid-friendly approach. Lastly, it could also create a negative experience and demotivate your student. Even correction can be made fun. Instead of saying no, you can do a crying face. It usually makes them laugh. And likewise, undercorrecting is also possible, which can allow the student to develop bad habits. If we don't correct them, they will think that they are correct and keep doing the same thing. Could also make any future corrections difficult. If they are not used to the idea of being corrected, they might not be open to future corrections anymore. Lastly, it could decrease the ability to communicate correctly. If they don't learn the proper usage of the language, how can they apply them? There are several types of correction. It is up to the teacher to decide which type will best support student learning. Always consider the age, level, and even personality of the student when deciding which type to use. You can do echoing. The teacher repeats the student's error, hoping the student will catch it and make corrections. For example, if you show a ruler, the student says, rubber. We simply echo, rubber, cueing the student that there is an error. Next, we have reformulation. The teacher says the correct way without calling attention to the student's error. For example, if the student says, this is a pencils, you say, these are pencils. I only use this technique if the mistake was just a slip and I know that the student already understands the lesson. Next is the cliffhanger. The teacher repeats up to the point of error and lets the student finish. If the student says, these are a pencil, you say, these are... Let the student complete the sentence, of course, while you do TPR. And the next is gesture or TPR. You can just give a puzzled look like, or All right, the next is questions. If the student says pens, you say pens, pencils. The teacher gives two answers to choose from. This gives the student a sense of accomplishment that he or she got the answer. The next is prompting. Using TPR to describe the answer or to say the student needs to add something more. There's also what we call finger correction technique. If the student says, this is apple, say, show your fingers and say, this is an apple. Okay. And there's also what we call syllabication. If the student says angry, you syllabicate the word, giving focus on the syllable where the error was committed. Angry. Or just say gree. Angry. There's also what we call the clapping technique. It's just simply clapping along with the syllables to emphasize the word. Angry. just to make it more fun. There are things to remember when you correct a student. First is don't be afraid to correct the student. It is our job and the only way for the students to truly improve. Parents expect teachers to correct the language and pronunciation. Don't be shy about correcting them even in front of their parents. They prefer that. Encourage the student after they finish the task, regardless of how many errors they committed. Always end the class on a positive note, even if they committed too many mistakes. It will make them excited to come back for more. The methods don't need to occur alone. They can be used in combination. For the same error, if the student doesn't get it the first time, it means that technique might not be effective. You may use a different one. Next, avoid negative words, negative expressions, body language when correcting errors. Be careful with your choice of words and the tone of your voice. Also, never show looks of disappointment or frustration. Avoid mindless echoing by eliciting repetition. When the student got the answer correctly, no need to echo, but you can encourage the student to repeat it to build retention. And lastly, don't dwell too much on one error. 3 to 4 attempts are enough. Remember that there are a lot of other things that the student could learn from the lesson. Next, let's talk about elicitation. It's a technique ESL teachers use to extract information about what their student may or may not know. It can benefit both the teacher and the student in the following ways. It makes efficient use of class time, creates a learner-centered environment, and it promotes student engagement. So when should I use elicitation? Elicitation should be used when you're not receiving the desired response or sufficient output by the student. It can be helpful in all areas such as vocabulary, reading, grammar, background and knowledge, thoughts or preferences. There are types of elicitation. Some elicitation strategies are more effective than others. Which one you will use depends on the concept or the task of the student and the student's ability and the desired response that you're waiting for. Example of elicitation strategies are the verbal ones, the beginning sound. For example, if you are expecting your student to say apple, you say We also have the sentence starter or the frame. For example, instead of just saying apple, you lead the student to say, this is, and also you can give clues. For example, if the answer you're looking for is apple, you can do this. And there's also what we call two choices, just like questions. You give two choices and then ask the student the correct answer. For example, apple, orange. All right, now let's go to the nonverbal ones. The first one is to mime or act it out, like what I did a while ago. Apple, or happy. If the desired answer is happy, you can show a happy face. And there's also what we call two options, just like questions. Show two things. If the answer you're expecting is ice cream, you can just show and then they will choose ice cream. There's also what we call narrow selection by circling, narrowing the selection by circling two possibilities. For example, if there are 5 possible answers on the book or on the material, instead of letting the student choose from all the 5 answers, you can just limit the choices to 2. Just circle 2 possible answers and the student will choose from those 2 answers, from those 2 possible answers. The next is underline or circle. If the answer is already on the material, you can just give a cue or give a clue that that's the answer. The last one is draw a picture. Sometimes I do this with my students because a lot of them love to draw. If the answer I'm looking for is a tree, I just draw a tree. Lastly, there is what we call wait time, or the time that we allow a student to provide the answer. It shouldn't take forever, again, depending on the student's age level. It could be between 3 to 8 seconds. Remember, during the wait time, it shouldn't be 8 seconds of dead air. Do some prompting, prodding, and demonstrating to lead the student to produce the answer. If you need the student to say, I am happy, and it looks like he or she couldn't do it independently, you can just do TPR for I am happy, like. Please note that not giving sufficient wait time can shut down students' thought process. It could frustrate the learner and discourage future engagement or participation. This can make accurate student assessments very difficult. Number 2 is pace appropriately. Should we teach lessons at the same pace every time? Of course not. We need to be student-centered, meaning we adjust our style, our pacing as we teach according to the student's age, level, personality, interests, and even mood. If a student is just a beginner, we grade our language and adjust our pacing appropriately. And likewise, if a student is advanced, we adjust to a pace that will not bore the student. Number 3 is model instructions. Simply put, we do not tell the student what to do, we show them how to do it, much like in real life. If a student is new to EFL classes, all they will hear is blabbering. It wouldn't make any sense to them. So modeling will save you time and effort, and also a significant amount of teacher talk time, which we will get to later on. Instead of telling a student to match a word to its picture, you simply show your mouse in the act of drawing a line, and then draw a line from the first word to its picture, after which prompt the student to have his or her turn. Number 4 is use positive reinforcement and praise. On the platform, you will find stars, but it would also be exciting to establish a secondary reward system like ice cream, cookies, or fruit in a basket. Introduce your reward system at the same time you introduce the stars. This will set the student's expectation and build up excitement. When giving rewards, we have to be creative and fun. Make an impression, be unique, but avoid using too many words. Be genuine when praising. Don't keep repeating the same word every time you give a reward, like, oh, very good, very good, very good, every single time. Alternately, use other words like great, amazing, wonderful, excellent, good job, wow, awesome. Don't be stingy with praise, but likewise do not overdo it, therefore making it lose its value. Do not praise an error. I've heard teachers saying good out of force of habit, even if the student didn't get the answer correctly. It will give them a false sense of accomplishment and they will repeat the mistake again. I would suggest coming up with something original and something that is your own brand when giving rewards, like a star for you, or a dancing star, something like that. And then sometimes I ask the student to dance along with a star. Or sometimes there could be a and then you catch it. A star for you. So it's up to you. Use your imagination, use your creativity. There are more than 100 ways to reward a student. Just don't make it complicated and time-consuming. Number 5 is maintain positive teaching environment. As EFL teachers, we've seen every kind of student. The uninterested, the demotivated, the rude, the moody, the baby, the self-centered, the talkative, the ball of energy, the crybaby, the proud, you name it. But the kind of student shouldn't determine the kind of teacher that we are. No matter how unbelievably difficult a student is, we should stay the same kind of loving, welcoming, jolly, and energetic teacher. The student must remember the class as an enjoyable one that would make him or her want to come back. I know that it's challenging, but that's part of what we signed up for as teachers, right? So remember, be lively and perky, enjoy, and make sure that the student is having fun. Establish rapport with your student. Show genuine interest in him or her. Make sure that the student will remember you as a fun and interesting teacher. Lastly, think outside the box and be creative when it comes to presentation, practice, and production. Number 6 is use props. They serve many purposes like attention grabber, lesson aid, drilling aid, CCQs, used for CCQs, rewards, and there are a lot to choose from. We have regalia, flashcards, toys, puppets, whiteboard, even manipulatives, and even Manicam effects. They serve a great purpose, especially to young students, because they are visual learners. It could keep them interested in the lesson. They would also understand the topics better as they associate them with real-life objects. But they can also become a distraction. Props can be hard to organize around your workstation. We don't want to ramble around or to look for a specific prop in a chest full of toys. And some kids, when overly stimulated, may find it hard to bring their focus back to the topic or to the material. They might also want to show you every piece of toy that they own, disturbing the flow of the lesson. So only use them to good measure. Number 7 is meet the lesson objectives, because Novakid lessons are structured in a way that will be most effective for EFL learners. We have to stick to the structure by focusing on the target language and objective per lesson. How can we do it? We just follow every slide objective. Remember that you can tweak it a little bit to suit your student's needs and abilities. If the student is unable to circle the picture with the mouse, you can just let the student do air tracing instead. If the student is advanced, instead of letting him or her repeat the word, let the student make simple sentences using the word. The next is, number 8 is use TPR, total physical response. TPR includes emotions, actions, facial expressions, voice. Novakid puts a premium on the use of TPR for a good reason too, because it can lower students' discomfort and level of hesitancy to participate. It is a great way to increase student engagement and maintain focus. It also increases comprehension and long-term memory. Lastly, do not forget, no matter if the nationality is a child's first language is in fact sign language. Wherever you are in the world, it is universal. Kids try to communicate first using sign language. Remember, not only the teacher should do TPR, you can also get the student to do it. It will make them actively engaged. We all know that most young learners are visual learners. Some could also be kinesthetic learners. If your topic is feelings, aside from you using facial expressions, get them to do the same. For example, sad, or scared. Not only will your student enjoy, but you will actually have more fun too. Number 9 is maintain appropriate teacher talk time. At Novakid, remember that less is more. Simplify your language. Use the least possible words without sacrificing grammar. It is a simple principle that says to speak better, you have to speak. Speaking less will give your student more opportunity to speak. And keep in mind that since most students are beginners, the more words you use, the more confused they become. I cannot emphasize on this enough. Never be wordy. Don't use transition words like, oh, come on, join me as we swim to the next page. Come on, swim, swim, swim to the next page. Here we are. Great swimming. Just turn the effing page and keep it shut. Do not mindlessly echo students' answers. If you need the student to say happy, just try it with pure TPR, like that. And if you want to ask CCQs instead of saying, what is this? You just use TPR, like, or, Therefore, you are significantly lessening the amount of words that you use. So TPR. Number 10 is give appropriate extension activities. Before we discuss this, always remember it is important to check first the student's comprehension of the material, or give what we call CCQs. CCQs are concept checking questions. The teachers use them to check the student's understanding of the material. Remember, asking, do you understand, is not a CCQ. By eliciting responses from the student through these types of activities, the teacher can get a much more accurate assessment of the student's comprehension. The student expresses what they know, and the teacher better understands when and where clarification or extra support is needed. There are some things that you need to keep in mind when using CCQs. Number 1 is keep questions short and simple. Keep student comprehension level in mind in forming questions. Ask closed questions, answerable with a yes or no, and also ask open-ended questions requiring more language output. Lastly, have flashcards, props, pictures, and various toys available to clarify the questions. So did you know that CCQs don't have to be in question form? It is a good idea to use different ways of checking concepts so that the CCQs don't become boring and mindless for the student. In fact, CCQs are already presented throughout the lessons with gestures, sounds, and words. Whether you are asking standard CCQs that require an oral response or choose one of the other activities above, each gives the student the opportunity to be more actively involved in the learning process of the target language. This should always be the goal. Of course, there are cases where the student is advanced. What should we do? If a student is breezing through the lesson, add extension activities to suit their ability, but still use the same material. Do not introduce a different topic. For example, if your topic is school items and the student learned the names easily, you can challenge them more by asking them the color of the notebook, or if they've got pencils, how many pencils they've got. Or if the topic is parts of the face and the student learned the vocabulary easily, you can introduce a new one that is also in the picture, like if you talked about hair, if you talked about eyes, ears, and nose already, and mouth, you can also add, even if it's not in the material, you can add hair, you can add chin, you can add cheeks. So these are the 10 things that would make your interview or demo a success. I will leave you now with 3 questions. Number 1, which of these 10 are you good at? Number 2, which of them do you need to improve on? And number 3, which do you think is the most important? Post your answers in the comment section below. Thank you for watching ESL 101 with Ina. Bye!